A series of storms moving into the western U.S. will shake up the weather pattern for the foreseeable future, including bringing record heat for millions. In this video, we'll see what's going on. But first, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more weather updates. So, pretty much what's happening is you can see there's this huge ridge, really especially over the southwest, and then it also expands up into the even further north into like Montana, and this is going to be bringing those record high temperatures, especially over Arizona right now. They're having record high temperatures even over Texas, but you have this huge ridge in place. But then notice what's happening this weekend. You have kind of a storm system moving into the Pacific Northwest, and then by the time you get to Monday and Tuesday, it really takes over the western U.S., especially the southwest, and this trough will bring, some stormy conditions, rain and snow, but also below average temperatures, while you have, that heat dome really pushes further east over the Midwest, even going further east into the Northeast, and, through the middle of next week. But then you have another system at the end of October, going into early November. Another trough plunges down into the Pacific Northwest, and then another one behind that. So, a really active weather pattern for the West. And this would really be a negative PNA, where you have that troughing with, colder and wetter conditions over the western U.S. and warmer and drier conditions over the eastern U.S. That's pretty much what it looks like. So that's the basic pattern. And then if you actually look at the precipitation side of things, you could see the storm system really coming into the west coast this weekend with, it looks like, mostly rain over western Washington and Oregon. So it's still a sort of a warmer system. But then you start getting more snow spreading into the mountains in the western U.S. by Monday and Tuesday, and then notice by Wednesday you have, later on Tuesday and going into Wednesday, you have quite a bit of snow over the Rocky Mountains, and then that snowstorm kind of fades out. But then you have another snowstorm on October 31st that comes in. This is a more significant snowstorm, and that really pushes into the Pacific Northwest at the beginning of November, and then you have more storm activity after that. But notice the eastern U.S. really not getting any snow, just they are getting a lot of rain. And notice what's happening. You have pretty much this big high pressure area, and it's steering all this moisture around that and pushing it up across the Midwest, even parts of the Northeast, but also conditions staying warm there. And you do have a little bit of snow finally over Minnesota, also some snow for the Northeast, but most of the winter storm activity is going to be over the West. And then in terms of the actual temperature anomalies, notice you see all these above average temperatures across the South, the West, the Southwest, some of that record heat. And then you notice this big heat dome, it really expands into the central plains and then pushes into the Midwest, going into Monday and Tuesday, where you have those cooler temperatures finally really set in across the West, but that heat surges east, and you have that record heat is going to be pushing more towards the Midwest, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then even well above average temperatures for the Northeast on October 31st, and then but consistently below average temperatures, it looks like, over the West, with repeated storm systems. It stays warm over the East, and that's the general pattern that looks to be in place for at least the next 7 to 10 days. And actual temperatures, today we have temperatures, in Arizona in the upper 90s, around 90 degrees in Texas, 80s in the South. It's pretty warm. And then, further north you have temperatures in the 40s and 50s, but it will start cooling down as you notice, over the next couple days, it's still warm down in the south and the southwest, but then notice what starts to happen. You see it's cooling down in the western U.S., temperatures dropping from the 30s to the 20s in the higher elevations, and then temperatures, those really warm temperatures surging up, 80 degrees in Iowa, mid 80s in the central and southern plains, but some of those warmer temperatures really reaching up pretty far to the north, and this is going to be definitely a pretty good cold front. If you have on one side temperatures in the 70s and 80s, and on the other side 40s, that's going to be a decent front there. But then you notice the higher elevations seeing temperatures in the teens, even getting down to zero in some of these areas. Then notice what happens, that those really warm temperatures, mid 70s, upper 70s, start pushing further east, even going into the end of October, still those 70s in the northeast. That's kind of wild for going into almost going into November, and finally it looks like some of those temperatures cool down. Temperatures drop even more across the Pacific Northwest, especially Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, but then still in the 60s at least, and upper 70s across the Carolinas and the South, even going into November. So still those above average temperatures there, but much cooler in the West. And in terms of record heat, today there were temperatures in the upper 90s in Arizona, 90 degrees in Texas, upper 80s in the South. Tomorrow, Saturday, same sort of thing, mid 80s in the Southeast, upper 90s in Arizona. Sunday, same kind of thing, but notice that heat dome really, is going to be concentrated on the Southwest on Sunday, but then before it expands, this is expanding massively on Monday. You have a lot of, upper 80s, 90s, even temperatures in Texas, the Southwest, the central and southern plains, but then going into the 60s and 70s in Minnesota, which is very warm temperatures for the end of October for that area, and then on Tuesday you have some very above average temperatures, with even temperatures in the 80s in Illinois, 81 for Chicago, upper 70s for Michigan. Yeah, that's pretty wild on Tuesday. And then Wednesday it continues. That heat really starts moving east with those temperatures in the upper 70s. And then on October 31st to end October, you have temperatures in the upper 70s in the northeast. That's, New York City, maybe 78 degrees. Wow. That's pretty wild. So there's that record heat. And then you notice that here's a look at the jet stream, and you notice that big trough that plunges down into the western U.S., but then a big ridge over the eastern U.S., and that heat dome kind of, notice it gets squeezed and kind of pushes east, and then, but notice in general the pattern shows that this ridging in the east, but then more troughing in the west. It is the general pattern. It's not totally 100% constant, but that's pretty much what happens. And you do have some energy that moves through the Midwest, bringing that rain, but still, very warm temperatures consistently across the east and the southeast over the next week or two. And in terms of the actual total precipitation with all this activity, we have pretty much for the next 7 to 10 days, pretty much in the areas that are going to see the most rain is going to be the Pacific Northwest, where you could see 3 to 6 inches in general of precipitation. some of that will be snow, of course, and the Rocky Mountains could see, you know, 1 to 2 inches of precipitation, but that's going to be the liquid equivalent of snow. And then the Midwest and the Northeast could see, you know, a half inch to 1 to 2 inches of rain in general. But notice the amounts with the highest rain is going to be in the South. You have like 4 to 8 inches, maybe up to 10 inches in some areas in a track from Texas all the way to up towards the Ohio region, you know, where you could get at least, you know, 3 inches all the way to 8 to 10 inches of rain in some locations. And the Weather Prediction Center, they actually show even less rain. And, you know, especially these areas like along the East Coast and the Southeast, not really going to see anything over the next 7 days, and then the Southwest is going to be dry, and then even parts of the far northern U.S. are going to be dry too. You know, and most of the U.S. is actually under a drought. It's like most of the U.S. is in a drought, so not a lot of rain for most places, and pretty much all the rain is going to be in one of two places. It's going to be either, you know, the Pacific Northwest, or it's going to be, you know, in this track from Texas across the Midwest, where they're showing less, like only about 1 to 2 inches, maybe local amounts up to 3 inches in Oklahoma. The western U.S. will get a decent amount of precipitation, though, apparently, especially western Washington and Oregon. You could have, you know, 3 to 6, maybe even 6 to 8 inches of rain in some of these places. And actually the total snowfall would be something interesting to see. And pretty much over the next 10 days, you'll see, you know, pretty much the higher elevations are going to see several inches of rain, but the Rocky Mountains could see probably the highest amounts of 1 to 2 feet in some areas, and then in the Cascades, some of the highest areas about the same, 1 to 2 feet, but maybe the highest peaks could see, you know, over 3 feet of snow over the next 10 days. And the Midwest, the Northeast, yeah, gonna see probably pretty much a whole bunch of nothing in terms of snow. It's gonna be really warm. And what about the hurricane? Is there another hurricane coming? Well, the NHC is looking at a whole bunch of nothing in the Atlantic. In the Pacific, there's Hurricane Christy. It's a Category 3. Yesterday it was a Cat 5. Now it's a Cat 3. And it's pretty much disappearing. But then, something to look at is the GEFS. The ensembles are actually showing some tropical activity. At the end of October into the beginning of November, we actually have, you know, it looks like an explosion of tropical activity. You know, somewhere in the Caribbean, we'll have to see, you know, this Western Caribbean area that the GFS has been indicating something over here for a while, so we'll have to just keep watching it and see what happens. But it does show activity continuing at least through like November 7th to November 10th. You know, we'll have to see what that does, but, you know, really exploding around November 1st to November 4th. And the MJO actually is showing, you know, going in the Eastern Pacific to the Western Caribbean around, you know, the beginning of November. It starts looking more favorable, and then that could continue into mid-November. Like, we'll have to see if we can, you know, if there's going to be more tropical activity continuing all the way to the end of hurricane season, which is November 30th. We'll have to see what happens with that. And the Climate Prediction Center looking with their Global Tropics Hazard outlook, they're looking at a 40% chance of a tropical cyclone from October 30th to November 5th across that Western Caribbean area, and then a 20% chance from November 6th through November 12th. So it's possible there could be more tropical activity. We'll have to see what happens with it and where it ends up heading, if it's out to sea or maybe towards Central America or something like that. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share the video, comment below, and subscribe if you haven't already for more weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone, out.